Well, hello there, sailor. Welcome back to career mode. Happy Friday to all of you. I'm just drinking my Red Bull because it's hot. You join me for round one quali and race of the F1 2019 career mode season 1. You'll see me and my best bud there, George Russell, hanging out in the team's weird truck thing that's never put into context. Some things that's happened since we were last together. I have spent some of my R&D points. Originally I wanted to invest in improving the team's infrastructure and getting some discounts on future upgrades, but based on my experience of previous games, what I've actually done is use my first R&D points to get a front wing update, which I'm hoping will aid a little bit with the understeer problem that I'm still suffering from, and the durability upgrade, because the last thing we want is too many penalties, I think. Excuse me. Obviously the car is still the worst on the grid, however it's not the slowest on quali pace from what I can tell. A lot of people have been complaining online that Williams are OP in this game. I haven't been able to see if that's the case yet, but what I have seen is that certainly on practice pace, me and Georgie Boy were way faster than Williams would realistically be. If I need to, I will tweak the difficulty settings, but we're in for a wet race, which is usually good news because I'm quite good in the wet on these games. However, I don't have a setup that I'm happy with at all. I think I can get some good pace out of the car, but I don't know how it's going to be on tyres over race distance. We are driving 100% distance. I'm just not confident. Things don't look as grim as I thought they would, but I am by no means confident. I'm going to let Crofty do his thing, and we will get straight into qualifying. No point wasting time, eh? Plus also I'm flying to Finland in a little bit, and I need to be done. Boop, boop. Hello mate, how are you? I'm going to be quiet now for Crofty, out of deference for Sir Crofty.
We're just about ready to kick off today's qualifying here in Melbourne. It's the Australian Grand Prix. This is the kind of track that eats rear tyres for breakfast, or so I'm told by more experienced drivers than myself.
Lots of low-speed exits means the rears are in for a lot of punishment. It's all too easy to spin them up coming out of a corner too aggressively. It might look great for us as spectators, as we love to see a car driven beyond its limits, but it's not going to result in a great long-run pace.
I'm just going for a good old look around, mate. I thought I'd treat myself to a weekend. Something that's...
It won't be easy getting out of this qualifying session, but see what you can do.
Shut up, Jeff. Something that has bugged me a little bit. I actually said in the first live stream that I was okay with them inventing two drivers in the F2 career mode and them appearing in career mode as you go on. I actually have a new Williams shirt on the way, but it hasn't arrived, so I'm wearing my I think this is 2015. Yes, it is. This is the 2015 shirt. Yeah, my problem is that they have replaced Antonio Giovinazzi and Daniel Kvyat straight out of the gate for season 1, which I think is a little bit disrespectful. Like, those guys from F2, because we've got the transfers in now, I would have liked to seen them pop up when drivers perform badly, but just booting Giovinazzi out seems a little harsh. The Williams, as I was saying, does... they replaced Leclerc and Gasly. Oh, that's fucking horrible. I don't know, but I think they need to tweak some of the logic there. Anyway, I'm not totally thrilled with my setup, and I'm not sure how it's going to perform in the rain. What I do know is that I have potentially the pace to make it into Q3, which is worrying. But that's based off what I saw in...
All clear the garage, please. please. Car ready to
That's
leave.
based on what I saw in practice 3. And again, practice pace is not always a relative. Also, I think I may have done something very stupid there because my setup had extra fuel on board, so I might be running the car heavy in this qualifying session. But, you know, maybe the ballast helps me. Yeah, I agree with you, actually. Like, I don't see why they couldn't have taken some of the class of F2, or even add in a few extra F2 drivers and cycle them in like a theoretical fantasy universe. Like, I'm totally down with that. Then again, I'm not averse to totally made up drivers. I just think they shouldn't be on the grid the same year that you debut. Oh no. Yeah, that's what I was worried about.
That was a big one. Confirm you're okay, please.
And I've taken my teammate out as well. Right, let's take that a bit more slowly. I just think they should have come in later on, you know, as something to shake the grid up. The understeer on this car is still pretty atrocious. I thank you for your feedback, by the way, on the wheel. I've been tweaking it. It is a little better, but it's still not there for me at all. And I'm going to try it without the understeer enhancement on because, well, I get the feeling that the wheel just lets go at a certain point and the car just goes straight on, no matter what I do on the throttle or on the brakes. So maybe now we're in the realms of it's just my lack of knowledge and experience with the wheel, but I'm still not totally there with the wheel yet. It's funny because I'm actually better with the wheel in Project Cars, and that's just with all the defaults. So I don't know if F1 2019 has some specific requirements that are different from previous games. I mean, I struggled in the 2018 version of the game as well, so I'm guessing not, but I'm just inexperienced with wheels, I think, is the problem. Right, my plan is to do 2 runs in Q1, one at the start and one at the end when the track's rubbered in. This is sort of my banker. K-Mag's topping the quali. I would like it if it was realistic and the Haas was quick in qualifying and then just complete balls during the race, but I don't credit Codemasters with that level of honesty, to be honest. Based on George Russell's pacing in practice as well, I think maybe they've got a bit of love for Georgie boy. And there are the sirens. Do you know, I think it may very well turn out that if I ever move house, I can't sleep without being lulled to sleep by the sounds of emergency vehicles passing by my apartment each night. Hulkenberg topping the timing sheet so far on a 1:25, which seems cheekily fast. In fact, that seems unrealistically fast, but we'll see. Because everyone was in like the 1:30s in practice. Eighth, with Russell 9th. That's encouraging because my aim is to be faster than my teammate, obviously. We have a qualifying goal of 19th for me. And according to the qualifying run I did in practice, we should actually qualify 15th, but those estimates are, in my experience, usually wrong. I know, Jeff, I'm coming in. I'm only doing 1 lap because the tyres seem to give out on me, which is not encouraging for the race. There's a bad part of Zurich. Actually, I think a guy I work with was telling me about this. Because when I was there, it didn't strike me as a troubled city at all, but I was in the fancier parts, I guess, and then I popped over to Google, which seemed to have a very Berlin-y quality to it, actually. All the young, dynamic go-getters on their electric scooters with their chai lattes or whatever it is the kids like these days. The red light district for Berlin used to be around the corner from my apartment, but the police seem to have moved them on, so I don't know where it's moved to now. I want to take a look at my sector times. I don't think I can be a whole lot faster, but the track evolution should knock a little bit more time off. And this is my first. These are my first laps in proper anger in this car. So, since I was last on, I did do a few multiplayer races, and the problems I saw with multiplayer last time round are repeated. Which is first of all, there are a lot of drivers who will deliberately try and hit you. I mean, so deliberately that they'll stop on the track and wait for you to come round again. And when they hit you, it affects your safety rating. Presumably because the game's detecting that you're travelling faster than them, as if you've driven into them. It's been a continual problem with these games, actually, that the game can detect collisions, but it can't detect intent. 1:26.576, 2 seconds off pole. Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't want to be too harsh on Cody's about this because it is a hard thing to establish.
Fastest lap is a 1:26.5.
I think that's really important, but of course Cody's are never going to do that. Ah, George Russell, now I'm the you. Yeah, I'm going to have to go again because everyone's faster. If I can get into the 1:26.2s, I'll be very pleased. Yeah, actually, I agree. I think that's quite a good idea. Or if it at any point drives in the incorrect direction on the track. Well, actually, no, that's difficult, right? Because if you're recovering from a spin, but still, it just seems. I really don't know what to do because also I had some racing, which you would expect from a racing game, where I was racing wheel to wheel with some guys, and like half the grid was very respectful. The other half, they just left you no room at all, and because I'm still on my placement, I'm trying to get a good safety rating, so I end up not playing with dicks in the future. And so I was finding I was backing out of corners just instinctively because I didn't trust anyone I was racing with to leave me any room at all, and it would damage my rating more than theirs. The other thing I've noticed is that it is brutal on corner cutting. I had a potentially pole level lap nullified in Silverstone because one of my wheels, when it cut the white line on the apex of a corner through Maggots and Beckett's, and like everyone cuts there. Like that's how you run the track. You know, you ride the curb. But it told me that I'd exceeded track limits and nullified the lap. Yeah. I didn't drive France very much because I'm not a huge fan of the track. I don't think it's super well suited to F1, but I might go out now actually while the track's quiet. Oh no, I'll accelerate time a little bit and we'll see. I agree, but I think it's crossed the line to the point I would call it too strict now, because what you're getting is
engine fired. Where's set?
Joe, this is the first time I will agree with you on that. If I wasn't doing the failcast, I would be upset with this version of the game. I honestly would. I think it looks great. And I like the F2 career mode and I like the driver transfers, but there's something about it that for the first time doesn't sit well with me. And I've been very forgiving of Cody's in the past. Like when you look back at all the old failcasts, Simon and I have loved every iteration of the game pretty much. We've had our favourites. Like for me, 2014 and 2016 stand out as the games that put the biggest smile on my face on launch. But there's something about this version of the game, particularly the way they've tweaked the handling, that I just don't like so much. And the fact that they have... I don't like the fact that they've put all that effort into the F2 portion of the game to then go back to a plain old career mode with no character to it in the rest of the game. I had a press interview after practice which did ask some new and rather interesting questions, and the questions have answers now that are a bit more sensible and varied rather than plain good or bad, and they don't tell you before you give them what the effects are.
3 minutes to go.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the one thing I do think Cody's has got right is they've found the balance between sim and arcade that appeals to the widest possible audience. And I think that's really what officially licensed F1 games should do, actually. I think the fact that I can get a not realistic but an authentic experience. I'm going to cheat here. Because that's all I've ever wanted, really. I wouldn't say I'm a hardcore simmer. I don't want a realistic experience because I don't have the time to commit to get good at it. But I want an authentic experience, and I think the games do enough to punish you for mistakes. Like, it's very easy to lose time in corners if you take them badly, and it does instill good discipline. But also, you know, the fact they bother with the safety car and the simulation damage and things like that, I appreciate. And the racing AI has got better year on year, I think. It was a bit too aggressive maybe last year, but it did at least provide a stimulating challenge, to the point that I didn't feel the need to play online very much, which, given the quality of the community at the time, was definitely a bonus, I think. But I think it does right everything it has to do right. The problem is, if you're buying every version of the game, or you're a long-term fan, it becomes very hard to justify buying every iteration of the game, and I only ever do it because the podcast kind of demanded it. But even that's a hangover, really, from the days where we used to review it on launch and there was a reviewing element to it. I lost a lot of time in that last corner. I will have to... my battery's going to be flat as well. It's going to have to be a last gasp effort. I'm just going to have to tan the battery and see what I can do. I'll try and focus now. "10 years nearly, and I still take that corner wrong every time." Do not ruin my lap, Devon Butler. Oh, you have ruined my lap, Devon Butler. I still don't have Dirt Rally 2. It's on my list. It's on my list because I loved the original Dirt Rally. I thought it was phenomenal. And I really do feel that... fuck. I knew that was going to happen. I'm being too greedy. I need to chill out. If I don't get out of Q1 in a Williams on round 1, I think that's acceptable. I think it's understandable. You just lose so much time. I'm really notoriously bad for losing time in traffic. I can't handle traffic at all. It's definitely one of my weaknesses. Despite having played every version of this game, I've never adjusted to it. And even back in the day, you know, like the 2010 and 2011 versions of the game, you just went anywhere near the nose of an opponent and they would back out. Yeah, that screwed my lap. Out in Q1. Still, my target was 19th, so I think that's not a bad showing. And I outqualified George. And Daniel Ricciardo, for some reason. Oh no, I didn't outqualify George. George qualified 12th? Where did that lap come from? I see what people mean now by saying the Williams are overpowered. Because yeah, George Russell in 12th. That seems a bit off. Oh well, I've got some catching up to do on old Georgie boy. I'm curious to see if I'm still as good in the wet on this version of the game as I have been historically. Because that's the one area of these games where I've always done well. The heavier the rain, the faster I seem to be able to be relative to other people. Particularly Simon. I'm in the process of putting together like a chart that shows all the seasons and who won where and so on. Just because we've been doing it together so long, it's kind of interesting to know. And the one thing that you see is until we did the Haas season where I beat him for the first time, all my points where I really outscored him were either DNFs or wet races. So for some reason that's improved my favourability with Toro Rosso.
Alright, I think we can call that a successful qualifying. We should be in with a good chance in the race.
Right then, let's see how we do here. I'm excited to race for the first time. This is my first time proper racing the AI in F1 cars, so we'll see if the AI is improved. And we'll be very cautious as well. I'm trying to minimise my use of flashbacks because eventually I want to turn them off for a more authentic experience.
We've come to know and love for more than 2 decades now. The plays host to round 1 of a 21 race championship that takes us from here in Australia across the globe and the eventual season finale at the Yas Island circuit in Abu Dhabi. We're a stone's throw from the enormous Port Phillip Bay for today's race and the 3.3 mile Albert Park circuit. It's a bumpy racing surface here and the 16 corners could prove especially difficult in the wet conditions. Watch out for a safety car at some point during the Grand Prix.
Probably my fault. Wonder how the grid turned out after we were knocked out.
Davidson joins me for the race today, and it's a race where anything can happen as the rain is falling, grip and visibility is lacking. Could be something of a lottery out there, Ant.
Well, that's right. There's always an added element of unpredictability when there's standing water on the circuit. But one thing that might help him with the grip is a new soft to compound full wet and intermediate tyre that Pirelli have developed for certain circuits. We'll be seeing these new tyres for the first time today, yet another unknown on an already unpredictable day.
It's time to see how our drivers.
Two things they really haven't sorted out. Like, the cars and tracks look a lot better, but the models still look wrong. And also, Anthony Davidson still sounds like he's being puppeteered by the ghost of himself. He's very wooden, but it's a good qualifying for Magnussen.
Norris, Lance Stroll, and Raikkonen, Russell, McKinnon, Carlos Sainz, and Lucas Faber, Albon, and Devon Butler starts from the back of the grid. And now it's time to head down to the track.
Getting rid of Giovinazzi like that, not cool. It'd be nice to have the option to turn those guys off as well, actually.
We expected, so let's try to build this position throughout the race.
Right, let's see. Yeah, no point doing anything other than one stopping, I think. I'm still not happy with the setup, but we'll do what we can. Let's see. Forgot I turned on formation laps there, you may have noticed.
Technical issues coming off the practice start. Watch the RPM on the full start. We don't want to bog down.
See how tyre temps are. It's nice that they actually start cold this year. I never struggled with tyre temps until Monza in F1 2018, where for some reason, even though I was belting it round, my front tyres were constantly cold. Not cool, George. Stop it. Everyone's really creeping round as well, but the temperatures are coming up. So my aim is to have it clean off the line, but I'm pretty sure that I'll just end up binning it and having to do a flashback because that's how it is in your first race. I hear the AI is just as aggressive as last year, if not more so, which is definitely going to cause trouble through... Actually, the game doesn't seem to care, and this was a problem for the last few years as well. I also noticed it happens under safety car. So sometimes, if you accidentally carry a bit too much speed under safety car and you brake hard to avoid running into the guy in front, the guy behind you can sometimes get past, and the game will just act as if that's the correct running order. And if you try and take the position back, well, you get fucked, basically. Excuse me, guys. There's someone ringing my doorbell. Sorry. Sorry guys, I fucking hate it when that happens. It's like they don't know I'm in the middle of a Grand Prix. Selfish bastards. Right. Watch me crash it now as I unpause. So yeah, as I was saying, there's been some very weird detection issues when it comes to running order on the safety car or on the formation lap. But you know, that's arguably the least of the game's problems when they have a difficult launch, so I've always kind of kept quiet about it. I just, once it's happened and you're aware of it, you know to be a lot more careful under the safety car. Because there's nothing worse as well than running a really great race, being really pleased with your position, and then the safety car nullifying the gap behind you, and then you lose like I've lost 2 or 3 places before now under a safety car because I've had to brake really hard for the car in front and others have just sort of crept through. Those were some long lights. The ghost of Charlie disapproves. Yeah, I have the same problem I have in every version of these games, which is my starts are garbage. Am I ahead of Russell? I am. What happened to him? Oh well, not my problem. He can deal with it. As I'm looking back like Dick Dastardly, I bin it into the back. It was an elderly male man. That's why it took me so long. It took him forever to get up my stairs. Who were misses. It's still far too easy to get down the inside of multiple cars, I think. I don't know why the game acts as if all these cars would just bunch up like this in 100% of cases, because I mean they just wouldn't. They're all trying to find their own gap and their own line. Fucking hell, the brakes are awful in this game, by the way. I've never had an issue like this before, but you have to brake way earlier than the brake marker indicates, which is a problem for someone like me who does the gameplay live. Because you rely on the... I'm going to stop doing flashbacks, guys. I'm sorry, I know it's cheap, but I'm just getting my eye in. Because when you're doing live gameplay, it's really hard to concentrate and actually interact with the people who are watching. And so you have to give yourself a little bit of forgiveness in terms of things like assists and visual aids and things. And you see that, like, you go full on the brakes a good 50, 100 metres sometimes before the brake marker, and the car just goes straight on as if you're doing nothing. Right, I'm going to tuck in behind Stroll, and I'm going to try and be a lot more careful now, and you guys can police me for bad behaviour. Like that. Okay. Once things settle down, it'll be alright.
Strong start. Well done.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to lift and coast, aren't I? It just goes against, doesn't it, the feel of what you should be doing while racing. The grip levels in wet conditions feel pretty much identical to last year, which is going to help me out, I think. But certainly I think the effect of following cars is somewhat exacerbated, because it was always the case that if you were following another car closely, you would have to brake a lot earlier. But it's even more so now. I have to leave Devon some room. And I do like that, you know, defending does impact your overall race pace. See, look, I was braking miles away from the corner there, miles, and the car just does nothing. And I'm wondering actually if that's something specific to the Williams car, because it's the only car I've driven, aside from the Trident in F2. I'd be interested to know. I mean, the game's always done historically a fairly decent job of modelling the different cars' characteristics. I remember in the early versions of the game even the Mercedes had a longer wheelbase, which had sort of benefits and drawbacks. That was even before they reworked the physics for 2014. As this is supposed to be the most simmy version of the game so far, I do wonder if there's handling problems specific to certain cars. If I find out, I will tell you. Well, in multiplayer, cars are equal. You drive a spec car in multiplayer. In fact, what I'm worried about is, and I will hold my hands up and admit, I've not been through 100% of the menus yet, but I couldn't find a way for Simon and I to do our career mode playthrough together, our co-op career mode, because the only multiplayer mode I could see was like a ranked or unranked race, or to set up a league. And in the league, you can add AI drivers, but you drive a custom liveried car. There's no teams, as far as I can see. But hopefully when I dig in, I can find a way to get things as we would normally have them, because it would seem to me really stupid to not give people the chance to run a co-op career mode. That just seems daft. The good thing about running in the rain is that it makes things a lot easier on your ERS. I can run in hot lap for quite a few laps. Part of me is wishing the rain will ease off, but I know that it won't because I've seen the weather forecast. So I'm just going to have to learn to adjust to it. And it's probably going to make me very slow in China. Almost lost it there. So, other interesting thing to note is everyone made it through lap 1. I barely made it through that corner, but everyone made it through the first few laps. We've had no accidents. Well, none that will stand at the end of the race because of my gratuitous use of the flashback function. But the AI have raced each other fairly cleanly. Vettel committed to 2020. That actually, it both does and doesn't surprise me. Just watching him recently, I would not have been surprised if he'd retired. Because
it's definitely looking better than it was a few minutes ago. If we could just move a bit more of that standing water, we might be able to get onto the intermediates.
I'm so glad you said intermediates there, Jeff, because those of you who watched me last year will remember that Jeff seemed to have either a burning hatred or an unrequited love for me that made him bitter and resentful, because we'd be in full rain and he'd tell me to change to the slicks repeatedly and vociferously. And at one point offline, actually, I did take him up on his advice just to see what would happen.
Suggests that this heavy rain will be with us for a while now.
The brakes. Sorry guys. Don't go again. Jesus Christ. Now I'm the mailman. Right, hopefully that's our last interruption. I don't want to be a mailman, I want to be a racing driver. Okay, let's try this again. Off the throttle, brake, 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 brake. Car nearly spins, but we make it round the corner. I mean, I'm actually running 95% brake pressure and very, very large brakes, but they just don't seem to be doing anything. To be honest, mate, if you ordered me a kebab, I'd be all over it, like a tramp on hot chips. Can't go wrong with a good kebab. Although the delivery ones are usually soggy, so actually maybe you would have the last laugh. As I lock myself in the toilet cubicle on my flight to Finland later. I've got a concern now this is going to be a lonely race, because I think I'm just a little bit faster than the cars behind, but not enough to really pull away. And I'm definitely too slow and all over the place to compete with the cars in front. Yeah, exactly. Twist of lemon. What I find frustrating as well is that I'm spending almost the whole race off the throttle, and I can see now what drivers who were around in the early 2000s keep complaining about with the modern formula. Because it just feels like you're nursing the car the whole time, actually. And I bet I'm still taking too much out of my tyres, to be honest. Because the car's rotating under braking, despite my best efforts, so let's see where we're at. Those are some spicy brakes. Oh, lay them on me, brother. It almost seems counterintuitive, but I agree with you on that. I think the cars do need to be slowed down. I think I'm holding up my teammate now, thanks to some very poor cornering technique. Yeah, do you know, the runoffs actually, they properly bother me. I know it tends to keep more cars in the race, and some people think it's safer, but I don't care. I think, God damn it. I just think that there should be consequences for going beyond the limit other than a 5-second penalty. I think people would be far less pissed off if the racing was disrupted by someone putting it into the gravel, rather than, because it feels artificial when someone applies a penalty, because, well, it is. But the penalties only have to be applied because there's no gravel trap to act as a penalty. And I wonder actually how it would affect the driving of guys like Verstappen. To have much more consequences for a miscalculation or a misstep. George is a second a lap faster? What the hell am I doing? I'm just losing too much speed on corner exit, I can see. It's so slippy offline. It's so slippy. I will get to your comment in just a moment, mate. I'm trying to focus what little brains I have on making it round these corners without totally tanning my tyres. I feel like I have to deploy a parachute out of the back of this thing to get it to stop. It just refuses to stop. Yeah, I get the analogy. I just think, from a purist standpoint, getting rid of the runoff zones and bringing back gravel traps and barriers close to the racetrack will mitigate the need for so many penalties. I'm sorry, I can't concentrate because of all the heat. It just mitigates the need for penalties, and penalties do nothing but piss off the fans anyway, because they want to see guys racing. But as I say, if a race stops because a guy puts it in the gravel trap, that's going to piss far fewer people off than someone having a race nullified by a penalty. Go on then, here you go, George. For now. Yeah, I mean, to be honest though, that's actually what turned Max Verstappen into the stellar guy that we're seeing this season, right? Because he had that really rough start last season where he was binning it all the time, and Red Bull were at a point where they could no longer ignore that was going on. And in the end, it did actually serve to calm him down quite a bit. Tyre status. No? Nothing? Tyre status? Oh, for fuck's sake. One more time. Tyre status, Jeff.
Didn't catch that. Say again. Our gap to the car in front is 10.4 seconds.
Yeah, I'm not surprised the way I'm driving. Tyre status.
Alright, consensus in the garage is that it's probably about time for the slick tyre now. It will be slick, it will probably be quicker.
The garage hates me. They hate me and they want me to have a crippling accident. The consensus in the garage is that slick tyres are faster if a bit slippy. A bit fucking slippy, Jeff. Well, you know, what else is there to do for Williams this year? They're all on LSD. We can win the race with the power of friendship. Well, what I know so far is I'm definitely not pitting for slick tyres. What I was hoping was he'd give me an idea of when we've cleared enough water for the intermediates to come into play, but obviously he doesn't, so I'm just going to go by feeling, which is unfortunate because in this version of the game I have no feeling. Everything just feels very, very wrong. I still think a lot of this I can dial out with setup over time. It's just, so far I've not been able to find a setup that allows me to drive the way I want. I'm also burning too much fuel, but you know, why not? Everything else is going wrong. This car just will not stop. I actually think, you know, a lot of the reviews said, well, you know, the driving feels kind of the same as last year, and I agree. There's, like, you can tell it's the next one in the line, but the interesting thing is that having played every... Shut up, Jeff.
But there's no question that the track is drying. We might be in a position to change soon.
But to my mind, there's no question that this is the hardest version of the game to adapt to for me out of the box. I've lost more time per lap between 2018 and 2019 than I have between any other two versions of the game. 2017 to 2018, that caused me to crash a lot more because the cars would snap round on you on the curbs, and I'm a notorious curb rider. Which actually seems to have been removed from this version of the game because I'm riding the curbs somewhat recklessly in places and not feeling any consequences at all. But here the brakes are just very spongy even when you turn everything to full, and there's a persistent understeer, and there's also occasional snap understeer, which is very odd. Like, it occurs in strange places. My lap times are super inconsistent. Let's see if I can't work on that, because we're definitely not going to catch Super Badger Eyebrow Stroll at this point in a car his dad built for him. Well, that braking went a bit better. I'm starting to get a feel for it now. I mean, often as well, these transitions, it's just a case of getting the laps under your belt to get your eye in and get the feeling. Someone behind me has broken down because the yellow flag is following him. Yeah, Alex Albon. That's a shame. I like Alex Albon. He's so smiley. And like, he's very British public school boy, isn't he? He's got that sort of... it's clear that he's Thai, but he speaks as though he went to Oxbridge. It's very cool.
Okay, gap ahead is
What old boy?
0 seconds.
Oh yeah, fuck that guy. To be honest though, as I said in the stream the day before yesterday, I don't actually hate Devon Butler. And I can't tell if that was intentional on Cody's part, like that he wasn't supposed to be a cartoonishly bad villain, or whether he was just supposed to represent the other end of the sportsmanship, showmanship spectrum.
Deployment limit and losing ERS power before the end of the lap. Lower the ERS deployment mode to prevent this.
Jesus, Jeff. Raise it, lower it, what the fuck do you want from me? I was quite good with the RS management last year, but in this version of the game, I'm finding the... Yeah, that's actually a really good... yeah, I actually agree with that. That's quite a good description of it. What I was going to say is that I find the instrument layout in the Williams annoying.
Heavy rain will be staying with us for a while now, at least a 20-minute window.
Because the MFD, the display that's normally in the centre of the steering wheel, is obviously mounted to the cockpit, which I think looks better aesthetically, but it does make the numbers harder to read. And if I usually away from the stream where I can't embarrass myself quite so badly, I try to do a pro career mode, and so there you really rely on the instruments. So one thing I do know is I won't be driving for Williams in that, because I'm short-sighted and I'm about 30 centimetres from pressing my nose on the screen, and I still can't reliably read the numbers on that readout. But then again, that's probably for the best, because it would probably just say something like depressing and slow. Yeah, that's probably not a bad shout actually. Although I drove for Renault quite a lot in my career mode last year, and I try and shake things up. I think me and K-Mags would make a dynamic duo.
We're leading our teammate.
Going round punking the nerds, drinking their energy drinks, because we can't get any of our own because ours are imaginary. That could be fun. I missed my braking point there again, and that's cost me all the time that I built up, but it should. It should. Yeah, Gunter Steiner, man, he's the star of those. He really is. Have we lost both Toro Rossos? Because I only saw a notice telling me Albon was out, and then you said Butler was out. So yeah, it must be both Toro Rossos, right? Because we're down to 18 cars. That makes my 14th position feel a little bit less sexy, if I'm honest with you. Still, that gives us a good start to the constructors. I don't know why I'm feeling so frustrated actually, because I'm in a Williams and I should be struggling. Like, the car should be hard to drive. I mean, that's part of the reason I picked them. Oh yeah, true, but you know, being 14th and only having 3 cars behind you still doesn't feel like much of an achievement. For a while I was making gains on Stroll, but I really don't think I'll catch him now, because I'm just struggling to be consistent with the track evolving and the car behaving differently at different times. This engine burns a lot of fuel.
Let's increase ERS deployment to up the pace.
I have to say though, I was very meh about the Williams car when it launched, and I know it's a bit of a dog, but I do really like the livery. The livery's really grown on me. I think it's one of the more handsome cars on the grid. That and the Alfa Romeo. I think that Alfa Romeo livery is completely timeless. It will. It's maybe not the sexiest in the here and now, but it will age incredibly well, I think. It'll be one of those cars people want to have models of later on. There's just something understated and a little classy about it.
Gap to car in front is 12.0 seconds.
Yeah, I'm never going to make that up. I'm sorry for everyone who's been popping in and out, because there's not a lot of actual racing going on at this point, because I'm having what we could charitably term a Verstappen race, which is you're basically just doing some testing laps on your own because you're too fast for the cars behind and too slow for the cars in front. And we're just in our wee envelope. I'm surprised there isn't a Formula E game already, to be quite honest. When I was at the race in Berlin, there was a Formula E sim that people could drive on. It was like a ghost racing time trial doodah. But there's not like an official game as yet, and given how popular the series is becoming very quickly and how well funded it's turning out to be. Yeah, I still think they need their own officially licensed game. They definitely need their own officially licensed game. Something like this, but for Formula E, I would play to death. Although, to be honest, I imagine it's quite... I mean, at least in the Formula 1 games, if you want a challenge, you can play on a difficulty that's challenging and in a car that is inferior to those around you. So you can tailor your challenge a little bit, whereas, I mean, there is a difference between the Formula E cars, namely in terms of powertrain and gearbox, but, I mean, it's all spec aero, and, actually, did you see they're banning twin motors, which I'm a little bit disappointed about, because I don't know why, because last year Virgin were running with 2 engines, I think, and the racing was very close. It's not like, you know, there's a benefit and an offset to all the powertrain designs that we saw in Formula E, and the fact that teams were running with...
Everything's looking nice and tidy on our end. Let us know if you start to feel any
Oh,
issues.
Jeff.
Our head is 11.3 seconds.
Oh, I am catching Stroll at last. That's good.
Green flag.
Oh, someone else behind me is broken down. That looks like one of the McLarens.
Okay, some information on Sainz. They're retiring from the race.
Yeah, it is more cost, but if it doesn't confer a clear and insurmountable sporting advantage, and the company producing the powertrain wants to use that concept, I don't see why it should be banned, to be honest. I mean, they've got a full grid. They can't accept any more entries.
Gap to teammate behind is 3.1 seconds.
So, I mean, that's one of the things I really liked about Formula E, the fact you had a great variety of powertrains and gearbox concepts that were all able to compete with each other very, very closely. Because also, I mean, that's really what Formula E is there for, right? To drive on consumer electric car technology. And if you start, like in Formula 1, you have to restrict them now, because I think we're getting to the point where we've taken the internal combustion engine about as far as we're going to take it. Sorry, I just refuse to allow that to stand. I disagree. I think it's very much there to allow these companies to push the envelope in terms of electric car development and powertrain development, because otherwise, as a marketing exercise, it's hard as a marketing exercise alone, I think. I mean, motorsport has always been part of the R&D program for car manufacturers. Yeah, it is also for PR and showing off. I wouldn't disagree with you on that. But if you think about all the road car technology that was pioneered in Formula 1, active suspension, for example, auto and semi-auto gears, side impact bars. Yeah, in the last 15 years or so, yeah, basically null. But again, I think we'd reached the point where manufacturers were already looking towards hybrid and electric technology anyway, because a lot of cities are already starting to ban diesel cars. In fact, a friend of mine bought a diesel car from Renault quite recently, and he's had to return it because they're going to be banned. So it's a duff investment. And it seems odd, actually, to be banning diesel engines at exactly the moment they become super fuel efficient and less polluting, but I guess we're on a continuum, right? I wonder if I could get away with Inter's tyre status? Oh, fucking hell, Jeff.
Say that again, we're having trouble.
Now I missed my breaking point because I'm fucking around in the MFD. Codemasters really need to come up with a better solution for that. Jeff's voice control was quite good last year, I thought. Tyre status.
Okay, it could be a risk with this circuit this greasy, but we think the slick might now be the quicker tyre. If you think you can keep it on the road, let's consider swapping over.
Again, he's telling me to go for slicks. It's hard not to take it personally now. Like it's a grudge. Or maybe Jeff's just ever the optimist. For anyone who played the older games, do you ever remember that there used to be a guy on your tyres in the pits who was a very angry looking Asian man, and Simon and I always used to think he was getting divorced and just bringing his problems to work. And maybe Jeff's going through the same thing right now. Like he's fallen into a nihilistic spiral since the failure of his marriage, and like, you know, put the slicks on, who gives a fuck if you crash? Life is pain. Oh, I am eating into Stroll's lead. Maybe I can catch him by the end of the Grand Prix. Now I've got an idea what I'm doing. Full race update.
14th position. You're in 14th position. Stroll ahead. Gap to car in front is 9.8 seconds. They're on old wets. George behind. Okay, the gap behind is 5.2 seconds. They're on old wets. 13 laps until your pit window is open. 43 laps to go.
That's what I wanted to know. 13 laps till my pit window, okay. Maybe by then I can actually put the inters on. I mean, the track does feel a little more grippy than it did. Not vastly though. And if I miss my braking point, I'm still totally fucked. But again, that's not a complaint, because that's really how it should be. The game should be instilling good discipline in you. Do you know though, I think this is the first time in a career mode that I've had rain at Australia. Normally, particularly in your first season, they ease you in and it's always clear all the way through, but it's nice. I do like driving in the rain. I will have lost some time to the cars in front again, but that's okay. We're slowly eating into the gap over race distance. And I think this is actually pretty good race pace for a first outing on a difficulty that I found challenging in the last version of the game. I love that they hold out your pit board. I mean, you never fucking read it, but it's a nice touch. The car felt very sluggish out of that corner. For a second I thought I had a mechanical problem. And you know, that's actually something I want them to bring back. Like, make it totally optional, but I'm the kind of guy who has no problem running, you know, 50 laps of a 58 lap race and having my engine blow up. I'm actually not. One of my best gaming experiences ever was on F1 1998 on the PlayStation. And I did my first ever 100% race because ADHD to actually sit there for a full Grand Prix. and I was in David Coulthard's McLaren, and I drove to what I thought was a quite strong third, actually, given I was really bad at the game. And then 3 or 4 laps before the end of the Grand Prix, the engine just blows up. And you don't get that experience anymore. I would like to see that as an option, because I mean, most people will turn it off, I grant you, but it would be, I don't think it would be too hard for them to put in. I mean, they had a version of it in F1 2013 or 2012, because if you remember when the game launched, everyone was blowing up their engines and complaining about it. So it's not like, you know, they don't have the technology. We have the technology, we can rebuild him. In certain circumstances, yeah. And since then they've restricted it to like your DRS remaining open or your turbo going or something, but you've never got like a terminal failure, which I think is, it's a bit stupid really. So lap 18 of my first ever race in F1 2019, still struggling for consistent pace. My complaints from earlier in the Grand Prix remain. The car does not want to stop no matter how early I brake. I lose a lot of time in the corners unless everything is totally perfect. And there's a lot of understeer, even at low speed. However, starting to adapt to it, and we are gradually eating into Stroll's lead. He's also falling back from the pack, so whether it's actually me gaining on him or him falling back into my dastardly clutches is open for debate. Is everyone excited for the Austrian Grand Prix? I wish I could say I was, but I honestly can't see past another Lewis Hamilton victory, to be honest. This is why I thought Vettel might retire, because he seems to have lost faith in himself, and I've lost faith in him, to be honest, because I don't trust him now to go wheel to wheel with Lewis and not lose it. And you see a lot more self-doubt on his face, actually, so I really did think he was going to step aside. And I was excited by the prospect of Checo getting another shot in a top team, because I think his time at McLaren came just a little too early. But my prediction is that it will be another Mercedes 1-2, because I just can't see past that. But I think it will be another third place for Leclerc. I think Leclerc's doing quite a good job, actually, of remaining calm while... Jeff, stop interrupting, it's rude. I think Leclerc's doing a really good job of just playing the political game and letting his driving do the talking, and eventually the support from the team will come to him, I think, because it will have to. Most of Twitter are already calling them out for the way they ritually sacrifice one of their drivers on the altar of Sebastian Vettel at every Grand Prix. Vettel got more emotional. You mean? Oh, Leclerc, yeah, but I mean, if you compare him to other drivers on the grid, like, he was rightfully, deservedly upset after Bahrain, but I think he handled it as professionally as anyone could expect, and I think his attitude towards the team is generally positive and professional at the same time, which I think will do him a lot of good. And he's still very quick to take personal responsibility when things go wrong, which I've always found to be the mark of a really great driver, actually. I mean, that's really what drove Schumacher on so far.
The tyre situation is an interesting one, but I think the right call is to stick with what we've got right now.
Well, how can I trust you now, Jeff, since you've told me twice now to go and put the slicks on? Oh yeah, I mean, well, the Italian media are always unforgiving to Ferrari drivers. I think that kind of comes with the territory, but I mean, I would say Leclerc is the Ferrari driver I've liked most in the last decade. Whether that changes over time, you know, his attitude will develop as he establishes himself more and more on the grid. but I found him a refreshing presence. The way he's quietly confident but not arrogant, the way he takes personal responsibility, the way that he recognises it as a team sport. I think all those are very admirable traits to have, and why they may not mark him out as a Senna-like figure, I think they will be a key to success in the future. Really, I don't see that parallel. I tell you who else I've been liking, actually. The two young British drivers, Lando Norris and George Russell. Lando a little bit more, actually, because Lando's got that same quality where the first person he blames is himself. And he's been very loath to criticise the team, even when perhaps there's occasions where you'd think he'd maybe be justified to have a little bit of a whinge. And I actually think him coming in, there was always a risk, right? Because Van Dorn was supposed to be the next big thing for them, and that just didn't work out. And Lando was sat at the... I mean, he was like the last name on the McLaren young driver list that was ready to enter Formula One. And if Lando had not had such a strong start, I think you'd be very justified to be worried. I actually think Lando and Carlos Sainz is a great lineup for McLaren. I think a lot of them bouncing back is down to taking that step. Because there comes a point where, as great as Fernando is, you stagnate as a team, and you have a very myopic view if you allow yourself to become a purely one-driver team. And there's also, if you look at Fernando's career, as superb a driver as he is, and arguably the best of his generation, teams have always flourished after he's left, with the exception of Renault. Like, the best Ferrari form of the last 15 years or so was after he left. McLaren have started to find their feet after he left. And it does make you wonder how much influence he's had within these teams and how much damage he may inadvertently have done. Well, yeah, flourished is maybe the wrong term, but I mean, I would say last year for sure, and the year before, they had what I would consider to be the best car amongst the widest range of operating conditions. This year, the pendulum's definitely swung back to Mercedes, but for me, Mercedes were just better at maximising the package they did have. Whereas Ferrari, I think, had the stronger car in most temperatures and most track conditions. And that's definitely an improvement from what they were putting out when Fernando was there. No, but you know, you need time to for changes to take effect in the sport, right?
You're going to start losing some tyre grip around now.
Because, you know, certainly at McLaren, it sounds like he had a lot of clout and he was heavily involved in decision making within the team. And it does make you wonder, you know, all the stuff around the aggressive packaging of the Honda engine. I wonder how much of that was him pushing for tight packaging, as much as the design office going that way. Because, you know, Red Bull are already showing that if you cooperate with Honda and you allow them a little bit of leeway and input into your design, a lot of the big problems Honda have just evaporate. No, of course McLaren needed time for the changes to take effect. I mean, and you saw that, right? I do wonder what's going to happen now with Fernando's relationship with McLaren, though, because they still seem desperate to keep him around, but now IndyCar didn't go quite the way they wanted, and they're still not totally... Like, I originally read that they were committed to IndyCar for next season as a full entry, but then after they failed to qualify, I saw a comment from Zach Brown saying, well, you know, we're still evaluating a full entry, and maybe we'll go to hypercars instead, or whatever. And it made me wonder, actually, what they have to offer him now. I mean, it's interesting because he did say he was open to coming back, but part of me kind of hopes that he doesn't. Yeah, I agree on that 100%.
Ahead is 10.6
I think they
seconds.
felt, well, Indy's a spec series. It's far less technically complex for the team, at least, than Formula One. So maybe we can go there and just start getting the success we are lacking in Formula One. And I still maintain that if they'd been able to compete in Indy out of the gate, their F1 entry would come under a lot more scrutiny internally, and we may even see them leave the sport. I mean, Zach Brown essentially said as much in the same interview he gave the comment about hypercars, that, you know, F1 is not a sacred cow for them. And I think they're just desperate for any semblance of success now, which, you know, you could understand for a team with their history. It does make me sad to see, you know, the McLaren of the last few years, or Williams as they stand today, because I think if you lose those teams, the sport does lose some of its soul. But at the same time, I think it's becoming increasingly obvious that the traditional models of teams with traditional management structures just cannot compete anymore. Yeah, but I mean, they actually started hiring, didn't they? They have an engine deal with Chevrolet, I believe. They have a partnership with Carlin, because Carlin have some expertise in IndyCar, and they signed Bob Fernley, right, from Force India Badger Stroll Eyebrows. To be the team manager, which obviously you could make a far worse choice than Big Bob Fernley, as rotund, sweaty and ginger as he is. You can't really argue with his results in...
Reduce ERS deployment.
Oh, good shout, Jeff. I wasn't paying attention to my ERS levels. Lonely. Oh, did they? I missed that. Oh, well, hopefully Big Bob comes back to Formula One. I mean, I don't know who with, but... I always had a bit of a soft spot for Bob Fernley. I think he was what I would call one of the humans of Formula One, like Rob Smedley. You know, definitely an engineering mind, but he was able to present as a human being. That feels a little harsh, don't you think, given that he has no previous experience in IndyCar to my knowledge, and the team were running essentially with the Haas model. To fire the person in charge because you don't qualify or whatever, I mean, presumably it was related to that. That just seems a little bit short-sighted, but then again, you know, that is the mark of a team that are feeling a little desperate, and I think quite rightly McLaren are feeling desperate. What I'm excited for today, and what I'm hopefully going to watch on the plane, is Simon's career mode, because he and I have very different driving styles, and I'm very keen to see what he feels about this understeer and the spongy brakes. I really want to get his take. Yeah, I mean, McLaren definitely has become a lot more Americanized, hasn't it? I think that's in part because of the increasing hands-on approach of the Middle Eastern investors, but also, you know, the culture under Zach Brown has become very Americanized. And I mean, the one thing you can say about Zach Brown over the previous guys running McLaren is that at least he's able to get sponsors on board, because that car was looking increasingly bare. Yeah, I hated that branding. I mean, I have no idea who Husky Chocolate are, but, you know, it's good to have a sponsor on the rear wing that isn't owned by one of your drivers. And, you know, he got Coca-Cola on board. I checked their website, and actually it's just not my style. But then again, I have no style worthy of the name, which is probably why. I am perhaps the world's least stylish man. I like Jamiroquai, so that probably disqualifies me from being cool. I tell you what, speaking of Kimoa and the F1 connection, I don't know if you saw, but Red Bull have a range of sunglasses now. They're kind of garish and a bit tacky looking, but apparently they're supposed to be quite good. It's interesting to see all these F1 related businesses start to diversify. I think it's something that I'm quite surprised didn't happen under Bernie. Getting back to the game for a moment, something which I didn't cover in the last stream that I discovered in the meantime is that your online races, at least, the game creates a highlights package, very much like you get in sort of the FIFA games or the EA Sports titles, where the footage is sort of edited. There's slow-mo shots of cars taking corners, all the overtakes are covered. It's actually a really, really nice feature that I'm going to be using a lot for promoting the Failcast on social media and stuff, because I think it shows the best of the game off, actually. And it is a very pretty game, even on the PlayStation 4. I think less so when you're driving, but once you're in photo mode or you're looking back at replays, I guess the game maybe puts a little bit more polish on them and it looks fantastic. The thing that I've most noticed improved, actually, in terms of the graphics is the tyres. I posted some pictures today on Instagram to announce I was going live, and also missing corner apexes. And the graining effect on the tyres looks really, really nice. The way the light reflects off the texture, like all of it looks really, really good. So, I have to give them props for that. The AI seem, what brief encounters I had with them, it does seem improved as well, so I can agree with that general consensus. See, now how much tyre life do I have left? Quite a bit, actually. I'm wondering if I shouldn't stay out, because he keeps teasing me with the idea of inters. And I could maybe gain some places, because I know that the AI in previous games will pit for the full wets, and then they will come in again for the inters, because they don't have the wherewithal to sort of try and stretch the wets out just a few laps longer. So I could actually stand to gain quite a few positions if that happens. I actually managed to win in my first season at Sauber last season's version of the game, sorry, in Spa, because the full race was wet and the tyres lasted long enough that you didn't need to make a pit stop. And the rules of the sport, I believe, technically say you have to change compounds, but it only counts for dry compounds, right? Because I always thought that even if you were on full wets or inters for the whole Grand Prix, that you had to stop at least once. But apparently either that's not the rule or Codemasters haven't implemented it. And I ended up winning the race by an astonishing amount, because nobody stopped except me. So I just pitted, put on fresh wets, and then I was suddenly 2-3 seconds a lap faster than everyone around me.
These conditions don't look like they're shifting. We're predicting at least 20 minutes of heavy rainfall.
Which to me tells me the AI definitely needed some work in that regard. I also don't like that the AI cheat if you're in the pits during quali. What you'll notice still happens is that if you are, let's say you're in Q2 for example, and it starts to rain at the end of the session, you'll go out for your last lap, start losing grip, obviously lose time, and then drop down the rankings. But the AI will still, for a brief period, drive as if oh shit, that was a bad braking. The AI will briefly drive as if the track is still dry because it hasn't flicked the wet track switch, and that really bothers me as well. That really shouldn't be happening, at least not this many iterations into the game. Honestly, I don't think so, because what you're seeing already is, I feel, a big differential on race pace versus quality pace for a lot of the AI drivers. But I mean, it's hard to say until I've been a bit more involved in the mix, I think, and had a few rounds under my belt. Because certainly George Russell being 12th in quali, even though he didn't actually finish there in the end, that to me seems a little tweaked, to be diplomatic. Yeah, it has. I think they've been focusing more on polish than anything else. I think they got a bit complacent after they brought in the new physics with 16. And, you know, to some extent I can forgive that, because I really liked what they did with 16. It's one of my favourite versions of the game. I brake too late again. I'm hoping fresh tyres and what I've learned over this 29-30 laps allows me to be a bit quicker on my second stint.
Our gap to the car in front is 17.
Do you know, honestly, what I wouldn't mind? And I really wouldn't. Actually, mate, they've already started going that way, because you can buy cosmetics already. For multiplayer cars, for race suits, for helmets. Like, there are certain helmet designs that are behind a paywall, and then they've got an artificial currency as well that you earn through multiplayer racing. So they're definitely going down that route. But let me be totally honest with you, right? In normal games, I hate that. I really do. And what I hated about the way they launched this game is, I hate that they cut out the Senna Pros thing, and, you know, in some countries charged you an extra $20 for it, because you know the content is ready and it just seems stupid to tier your user base like that. But what I wouldn't object to is them saying, okay, we're going to update the physics every 5 years or whatever, and then just release a version of the game and then yearly update DLCs that are cheaper than a full game, but also alongside it, you know, release more and more classic cars and allow you to support development that way. Because I think a full price release every year that changes sometimes very little it's putting a lot of fans off. And again, it's only because I do the video podcast with Simon that I'm a religious purchaser of every version of these games, as much as I love them.
Pit strategy complete.
And then there's people like you, Beetlejuice, that, you know, don't buy every version of the game, which is obviously the smart thing to do, I think. Yeah, well, I mean, I actually inquired about this through contacts, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, and the original deal to Codemasters actually mandated that they have a new version of the game every year, and that was a contract signed under Bernie. So I don't know how long Codemasters' contract for the franchise runs, but at least the contract that we're on right now actually specifies that they must release an annual version of the game, like full game. But I do wonder if the new management are a bit more imaginative and could see that they'll probably make more money in the long run by having a games as a service model, which normally I hate, but I think it suits sports franchises quite well. Because a lot of the time what you're doing as well is you're shipping data multiple times, right? Because the core game is essentially the same and you're sprucing it up. You could also make the argument that, you know, it's more efficient in terms of any costs they incur on the shop side, because obviously you're paying for all the data in some way that everyone downloads. And, you know, what Simon and I have been saying for a very long time is this: if you give us more classic cars, we will pay for them. Like, if there was a Tyrrell pack or a Minardi pack, I mean, probably there won't be, because I'm pretty sure the licensing is going to be too complicated at this point. But certainly, you know, I don't know why we don't have classic Renault cars, really, apart from the R26 I think you get. But Like the old turbo era Renaults, I don't know why they're not in there. I don't know why we don't have more classic Williams cars, since they obviously have a deal in place already. I don't know why we don't have older Mercedes cars, like real classics. Alfa Romeo are back now, you know, why not release a Fangio pack? I don't get it. To me, that's just leaving money on the table, and it's good because it's not cutting content out of the main experience. It's something that's entirely optional for super fans. I think iRacing has actually been very well managed. I'm very impressed by iRacing. I think the way they operate has been. I think they've done a lot right, and it's something that I want to get into myself. Now I've got my wheel. Maybe I can put it to better use with other games, because I mean, like I said, the wheel feels a lot better in Project Cars 2, but for some reason with the Codemasters F1 games, I just cannot find any speed with the wheel. So far, and I've been trying on F1 2018 for 2 months, and I'm consistently 7 or 8 seconds slower. Yeah, I mean, that's what you want, right? People who are actually passionate about what they do, doing it. I think that's where video games have gone wrong in the last few years, that it's become increasingly corporatized. You don't have the small passionate studios that you used to get in the 90s, because they've all been absorbed into EA as soon as they've had any modicum of success, and then EA kills what makes them successful and shuts them down. Yeah, that's the other thing as well. I think that's something that could easily happen in F1 as well. There was a time 2-3 years ago where I was really worried about them changing the format of a Grand Prix weekend, because they were talking about it, and my argument was always, some people just don't like racing, and no matter what change you make, you're not going to get them on board. All you might do is drive people away. It's like I've never been a big tabletop gamer or anything like that. But there was a lot of stuff about inclusion and diversity in Warhammer 40,000, and obviously I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable or anything for any arbitrary reason, but I still see it very much as the reason women don't play Warhammer 40k is not because it excludes them or the law makes them uncomfortable. It's because by and large the ones I've spoken to think pushing little soldier men around a board is fucking stupid and boring, and no matter what change you make to it, they're never going to play it. They just don't like it. It's the same reason that if you try and change Grazia magazine to appeal to a more broadly male audience, all you're going to do is alienate the people who like the magazine as it is. Yeah, I mean, as they say, go get woke, go broke, right? That seems to be coming true more and more. I'm hoping that this leads to an important cultural realisation, that, you know, it's okay. Yeah, I know, outrageous. I shouldn't have said that out loud, actually, because Google will be knocking on my door in a minute, and I've actually got a Google Home Mini up there that I got free in Zurich. Probably so they can monitor me for this exact kind of thought crime. If I don't stream again, then look for me in the Google lag. Mining for Libra coins. The Google lag, yeah, exactly. I'm still hopeful, you know, that there's just a corrective response to all this. I'm pretty sure it's coming. I used to really worry about all this political correctness and the way it was beginning to affect lawmaking and stuff like that, but honestly, the way elections have been going lately, I have a bit more faith in humanity, and I think that maybe I'm just listening to a crazed minority, and actually the regular person on the street will just consistently reject stuff that's nonsense. And it's not even that people are racist. I think the vast majority of people accepted Martin Luther King's premise, right? Judge people on the content of their character. And saying all men are trash, that is not following that principle. Oh yeah, I mean, there's people talking about another civil war in America. I think that might be a bit hyperbolic, but certainly that's a society that's going to take a long time to stop being so fractured. And I think Britain runs the same thing over Brexit. My position on Brexit has actually changed. I was a staunch Remainer at the time, but as it stands now, I mean, I'm a Democrat first and foremost, so I was already saying, well, we need to leave now. That's the only democratic thing to do, and you do not want to be undermining people's faith in democracy. That's very dangerous. But also, like, I've started to be convinced and talked around by some of the arguments because I gave them a chance. And I still believe it will be economically damaging, but the question is whether the social and governmental consequences are going to offset that to some degree. And I think the wake-up call for me was watching the EU try and regulate stuff they don't understand, like the internet. And I'm not saying they have bad intentions, but it just seems like it's a bad system. It just seems very bureaucratic and ill-informed, and with increasingly overreaching power. And the libertarian streak in me is saying, well, do you know what, maybe it's better to take decisions closer to the people that they affect. Yeah, very much. I mean, I'm from an old Labour family, proper working class Labour, which was always no nonsense, but tolerant with it. Like, not a stick in the mud political correctness, but just decent salt of the earth working people. I mean, I grew up on a quite poor council estate, but everyone took care of the garden, everyone was decent. I mean, I hate to sound like an old person, but you literally could leave your door unlocked. I go back to the same community now, and you just can't do that. And a big part of that, unfortunately, is that the communities are not as coherent as they were before, because there's been a lot of incomers, and I couldn't afford to live where I grew up now because it's quite an idyllic, picturesque part of the country. And when I was growing up, there was nothing there. So it was a very boring place to be a teenager. Yeah, exactly. Less common ground, and that's the sort of fabric that holds everyone together, right? And it's not that we didn't have people from other backgrounds, because there was already quite a big Polish community even before Poland gained access to the UK labour markets, because we actually had a lot of Poles and Norwegian families that were descended from people who flew for the RAF and fought in the army during the Second World War and just stayed. So, there was... but also, going through that weaves you into the fabric of society, right? Because you come over and you fight for a country that maybe isn't yours, but then, you're very warmly accepted. And, the Polish people in my home village in particular were very well respected because, my grandparents remembered them coming over, for example. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There seems to be a tendency now that if you say anything about migration, like you voice any concern, and people automatically assume you're a racist or you don't want any migration at all. And that's very rarely the case, I find. When you speak to people, it's a far more nuanced view that they take, and it's mostly like it's just too much too fast. It's just too much too fast, and it's proving damaging to society. And I don't think you can really argue with that. I mean, certainly people I know back home have become far less receptive of incomers because, for one thing, the job market is a mess now. Wages are stagnant or down, and there's a lot more competition for work, and there wasn't a lot of work there to begin with. So, and then you have what should be old Labour, who should be standing up for handling this properly, labelling them as racists, and then you have UKIP coming to the door and saying, here's a sympathetic ear. And, you know, I don't know what UKIP's true motives are. I'm not going to paint them all as complete fascists, but I certainly don't feel comfortable voting for them. And if they were, by some chance, really dog whistle fascists, then Labour have empowered them more than anything. Yeah, that's true. I think I don't know. It's so difficult, right? Because you really don't want to be interfering in freedom of the press, but at the same time, they do so much damage now. Yeah, I'm starting to feel that way too. I mean, Conservatives are supposed to be fascists these days. I mean, I grew up hating the Conservatives, but, you know, I would never ever have labelled one a Nazi. And as I've got older, I've come to be quite fond of some Conservative minds, actually, because I've started to see them for what they really are, which is people who want the best for society as well. They just have a different roadmap for getting there. To be honest, I've fallen increasingly into sort of a libertarian bent just on a matter of principle. Because if you have principles and you say, okay, it's not right to do this to people, then it becomes very easy to expand the scope of that and say, well, actually, how much should we be forcing people to do? And there's this, I think there's a conflict between the idealism that we all have for wanting a better way of life and the reality that you can't force people to live under what you think is a better way of life. It's unethical. So I'm kind of for a... Oh yeah, I mean, you have to be able to argue your points, and I think the best thing anyone can do for their own politics, actually, is to steelman their enemy. Like, listen to the points, pay attention to the specific words that they use, don't put words in their mouth, and then credit them with being more intelligent than you, even if you secretly don't think they are. Like, just presume they are arguing from a position of knowledge and a position of intellectual honesty, and if you can still pick apart the argument, then you know, it's a pretty good sign that you've really considered your position and you've come out with something that's logically coherent. I mean, a lot of people spent their time laughing at UKIP's proposal to triple the size of the UK Navy, and sure, it's an easy thing to dismiss, but I think you need to sort of think about why they're suggesting that to really understand if you're missing the point. Yeah, I mean, I was really hoping Change UK would fall into that slot, because I was saying for years that there is a gap in the political spectrum in the UK for a genuine centralist party it's willing to compromise, and the extremists will always say, well, being a centrist is as good as being on the other side, or it means you have no principles, and I take that as the opposite. I think it's a very principled position to take. No problem at all, mate. You have yourself a great day. I'm very pleased you're able to stop by and have a bit of a chat with me. I can maybe push on for the last 20 laps. Yeah, absolutely. I will be live with Simon on Sunday after I'm back from Finland. It's a flying visit, and yeah, I'll bring some interesting things back. You take care, mate. Have a good day, and I will finish my race and then finish packing. Toodles for now. So, getting back on top of things, we are 20 laps from the finish of the Grand Prix. I'm still burning too much fuel, and I'm still running in a lonely niche. I can turn my ERS deployment back up, that's something. I've closed the gap to Stroll to 7.1 seconds. If the gap hadn't gotten so big at the start of the Grand Prix, I think I probably could have fought him for 13th, but I don't think realistically points were really on the card here. I'm actually taking that to be more of a setup issue than anything else. Because it feels like there is some pace to find in the car, it's just not behaving the way that I think it should, and maybe changing some of the suspension geometry and getting a few updates on the car, I think it could be a challenger for Q3. I should probably bump the difficulty up to reflect that after this Grand Prix. Maybe go up above 100 and see if it provides a more realistic perspectives. Because I mean, if you're going to play 10 seasons of a game, I think it's worthwhile to set yourself a challenge and actually work towards success rather than just constantly winning everything. And that's trouble I had with previous versions of the game, that once I adjusted to the changes between versions, you'd find yourself winning in cars that should not be winning, and that's always a sign that you're playing on too easy difficulty, in my opinion. The rain hasn't lightened up. We didn't think it would do because the weather report never suggested that it would. However, what is happening is the track is sort of clearing up a bit, and I do wonder if I couldn't get the inters on towards the end of the Grand Prix, but maybe it's too late already to make up the time difference. Tyre status.
There's static over the radio. Say again.
I don't know why Jeff can't hear me. I hope you guys can hear me. Tyre status.
Looks like it's probably about time we change tyres. It's a bit of a crossover period for sure, but the longer we stay out, the worse it's going to get.
Now that presents an interesting dilemma. Do I come in now and hope I'm faster? I mean, I nearly have enough space back to Russell, but then I'd need to be... Yeah, I mean, I'm catching Stroll as it stands. I'd need to be way faster than Stroll to catch him after a pit stop this late in the race. I think it's probably best to stay out, but I will be honest, it's a tantalising prospect, the idea of coming in, putting on some faster tyres and then just seeing if I can't boot it round. But it's handy that I've built up enough of a gap over Russell that I now have a free pit stop back to him. What I find interesting as well is that the game has decided to make Toro Rosso the weakest car in terms of performance, if not on the stats screen. So definitely claims that the Toro Rosso is underpowered in the game and the Williams is overpowered certainly holds true. I would have said at the start of the season that the Alfa Romeo looks underpowered in the game as well, based on where the cars are running at the moment, but as we've seen later in the season, actually it may be a bit more reflective of where they truly belong with the car in its current state. I'm going to be lapped soon, which is always fun.
Okay, gap ahead is 7.4 seconds.
I lifted off the brakes there when I shouldn't have done, but we still made it round the corner, so not too shabby. Is it me, or is that gap getting smaller and smaller to Stroll despite the time difference not apparently coming down? How have I taken 2 seconds out of him in Sector 1? That's mental. I mean, I'm not going to complain about it. Yeah, I see him. I guess those guys fighting each other, and I guess, yeah, it must be Norris, right, because Sainz is out. So presumably, we may actually come out of this 11th, potentially. There's a Renault running just ahead of them as well, which if we keep gaining on everyone at the pace that we currently are, maybe we could even fight it for a single point. Now that would be the best possible result I could hope for. My PlayStation is starting to smell like hot circuit boards. It's still very hot in my apartment. Like, it was 38 degrees the other day, but felt like 41, and today it's actually a bit colder outside. However, my apartment retains heat. The walls are super thick, and so it's boiling hot in here still, and I think my PlayStation is overheating a bit. Hopefully it lasts for another 17 laps. Yeah, definitely getting my eye in now. That's making me feel a little bit more confident going into some multiplayer later in the day.
They're speeding up again, so I expect they fixed whatever the problem was.
I have no idea who you're talking about, Jeff. None at all. Full race update. No, nothing. Full race update.
We're in P14. Stroll is ahead of you. Gap to car in front is 5.1 seconds. They're on fresh wets. George is behind you. Our gap behind is 23.3 seconds. They're on fresh wets. That was our last stop. No more scheduled pit stops. 17 laps to go.
Maybe carried a little bit too much speed through there, but we saved it. I'm enjoying this now. I mean, I was a bit unsure at the start, but what I'm enjoying now is having to be close to perfect to close down the car in front. You know, it feels like a nice challenge. Even though it's not wheel-to-wheel racing, I'm enjoying setting myself that test. Okay, 15 laps to go.
Be aware that these tyres need to last till the end of the race.
15 laps to go, and actually I'm catching him on lean fuel mode, so maybe if we knock that back up. I have to turn my ERS down soon, but we're down to less than 5 seconds now to Stroll. So maybe this is doable, and I really didn't think it would be, you know, coming into this. I really didn't. If I'd had this pace all the way through the Grand Prix, who knows where we could have ended up.
The circuit's definitely looking better than it was a few minutes ago. If we could just move a bit more of that standing water, we might be able to get onto the intermediates.
I completely agree, Jeff. I completely agree.
The gap to the car ahead is 4.2 seconds.
Yeah, eating into that lead. We're coming for you, Badger Eyebrows. We're coming for you. So, I mean, certainly running a 100% race, I think, has definitely helped me get my eye in and feel a bit more comfortable with the changes they've made to the driving model in this game. I'm enjoying the rain again, which I wasn't initially, but again, that's because I just wasn't used to how spongy the brakes have become, how understeery the cars are compared to last year.
We need some energy harvesting. Reduce ERS
Yeah, I thought that was coming. So we'll turn down our ERS. Fortunately, we ran on lean for quite a while, so we're in a good position now to sort of keep pushing on. And while we may not get a point, unless there's some attrition in front of us, we may finish just outside the points, and that would make me one very happy Williams driver. Ideally, I want to catch them before Lewis catches me, because being blue flagged is obviously going to cause me to drop back a bit from the cars I'm following. And also, traffic in this game, in particular, causes me to have a lot of accidents. Sometimes trouser accidents, sometimes actual accidents. Oh no, Raikkonen's got past George Russell. I thought we were on for quite a good result there, George. I'm trying to think who could be behind us now. Because Raikkonen's 15th, Russell is 16th. I wonder who's 17th, because both Toro Rossos are out. One of the McLarens is out. It must be Webber in the other Weber in the other Alfa Romeo. Which feels a bit harsh on Alfa Romeo. I've been expecting you, Mr. Stroll. Daddy's money can't save you now. I'm putting a lot of effort in this year as well. I've ordered Williams teamwear so I can dress the part for these streams.
Our gap to the car in front is 2.3 seconds.
I think it's actually a little less than that, Jeff. I think you took that from a different timing point. Right, now I have to be careful because we're getting to the point where we're going to be affected by the disrupted air from the car in front, and that means the braking is even worse, and you can't hold as much speed through the corners. The car will just give up on you and throw you off. So as long as I don't balls this up, I've got a chance now to maybe get up to as high as 11th. And then we just need someone to have an accident, anyone, in front of us, and we get a point on our debut, which would be very, very cool. Yeah, bye Ballard. I may go quiet for a little bit now because I find if I can just shut up and concentrate, I should be able to race quite a bit better.
Blue flag conditions. Create a gap and let the car behind through.
Yeah, I'll let him through on the straight. Come on, go through if you're going. I actually had to lift off there. This is what annoys me. They had plenty of opportunity to get by me there and just didn't. And now I'm going to lose all the time I've gained to Stroll. And my visibility is garbage now. Right, go on, off you go.
Blue flag, blue flag.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Just blue flag after blue flag. Go on, Leclerc. Right. Now we should be okay for blue flags for a bit. Hopefully they start slowing down Stroll because he's almost off my mini-map again because I had to slow down so much to not get a penalty. "12 laps to go," well 11 really. It might actually be that I lost too much time there to actually get back in front of Stroll, which is super annoying. Their timing could not have been worse. At this stage in the race, you know, my pace relative to Leclerc doesn't actually look that bad. But yeah, that lap was 7.1 seconds slower thanks to all the traffic. I'm hoping if I can stay reasonably close to Leclerc, then I can go on the attack when he gets through on blue flags. Lost a lot of time there with the rear kicking out. It's not cool. But I can turn up my ERS again, so we'll pop that up on high. I'm still on carrying a little bit of extra fuel, so we can push on. And yeah, Hamilton still hasn't got past Stroll.
Okay, gap ahead is 9.4 seconds.
Yeah, it cost me so much time. I'm really pissed about that now. Oh, it's getting hot in here. Don't worry, I won't take off all my clothes.
Keep managing
I'm trying. Yeah, I think the blue flags have fucked us. So my tyres are going off again now, so actually the tyre wear doesn't look too bad, but it feels like they're going off. Oh no, there's Stroll. We may still catch him. Right, now I'm going to go quiet again because I have to be very, very clean. Go on to hot lap ERS for a minute. Close.
The car in front is 3.8 seconds.
It won't last long at this rate, but maybe we can close down the gap while everyone's still fighting with each other over blue flags. This engine is still very thirsty. I need to get some fuel efficiency updates on this car. That much I know for certain.
I definitely think we need to stay on this tyre a bit longer, but there's no question that the track is
We've just set a purple sector 1 in a Williams. It's all coming together. Yeah, fair crack. Well, brace yourselves because we're coming up on the only piece of action you'll get in this Grand Prix. I'm driving on my own the whole time. 8 laps to run, and we are currently fastest in Sector 1, and we're about to get into a fight with Lance Stroll for P13, so, you know, I hope you can all handle the excitement. How's my ERS looking? Good. Let's pop that back up to high. We're slowly getting there. We're slowly reeling him in. Very, very slowly, but we are. Full race update.
14th position. You're in 14th position. Stroll ahead. The gap to the car ahead is 3.9 seconds. They're on old wets. George behind. The gap to the car behind is 29.0 seconds. They're on old wets. Look after these tyres now.
Oh, George has got in front of Raikkonen again. Good lad. We seem to be on the bubble now, stagnating a little bit. I was making such great progress as well. Don't know, it seems like the gap gets down to...
But be aware your tyres need to go the distance. Our gap to the car in front is 3.2 seconds.
Right, I'm going to keep pushing. I'm under-fueled again immediately. Okay, well the one good thing is it's brought the Renault back into play as well. Everyone's sort of bunching up in front of me, so maybe I actually have a shot. Just have to be very, very careful, very sparing on the throttle on corner exit, very early on the brakes, and just keep it nice and clean. Lose as little time as possible through lateral slides. Keep an eye on that ERS, which I need to switch down again. Six laps remaining.
Battery charge is low. If we turn down the ERS deployment, we can harvest more energy.
Yeah, it's too late in the race for that now, Jeff. I'm going to leave it on medium and just use it as I gain it. Because we're so close to Stroll, I can feel his bushy eyebrows tickling my chin. And Norris and whoever's in that Renault are starting to fight as well, which is slowing everybody down. And that's my time to strike. That was better. I'm worried now. I'm getting used to having a very understeery car, and it's going to come and bite me in the ass when I'm driving something better. That's what happened at Sauber in my career mode last year. I got really used to a bad car, and then as I left the team, all my updates became inbuilt into the car for the next season, and they went on to like winning races and podiums, and I moved to Renault, which handled like a complete sack of crap by comparison. That's right, you all bunch each other up.
There's 5 laps of fuel remaining.
I lost a bit too much speed there by allowing myself to slide sideways. George and Kimi's battle has also moved once again into the favour of Kimi Räikkönen. I've got cramp in my hand. I'm hoping George gets back past through him. It would be nice to have a teammate who's close to me for once.
Flag.
Oh, excellent. Excellent news. Who's out of the race? That looks like a Ferrari going very slowly up ahead. It's... oh, poor Charles. But that means if I can get to the head of this train, we get a point for Williams.
Virtual safety car, virtual safety
Oh,
car.
amazing.
Reduce speed immediately and keep a positive delta.
Right, let's turn everything down to low. This has played right into our hands.
VSC ending, we're going green. Maintain positive delta until the green flags. Okay, clear.
This has played right into our hands. I can get on the MFD.
There's 4 laps of fuel remaining.
Right, I am going to shut up now because this is a tense moment for me. I've been waiting the whole Grand Prix for this. Come on, little car, I believe in you.
It's not a perfect situation, but I don't think we have cause to move on to a different tyre yet.
No, I wouldn't think so. I don't like how on the cusp my fuel load is. Not a fan of that at all. Don't know if Norris has some kind of problem, but we are going to get past him.
Okay, we need some energy harvesting. Reduce ERS deployment.
Ah, fuck. Ah, I'm tense. I'm tense, boys. I'm tense. Bollocks. Have to calm down now, stop being stupid. That's much cleaner. That was always going to happen. I need to brake a million miles from the apex of that corner to make sure I get round without smacking into him, because I don't want to get passed on a dirty overtake. I want the point, but I don't want it that badly. Sebastian Vettel goes fastest. Yeah, Lando's got a straight speed advantage, which is surprising given he's on a Renault power unit against a AMG Mercedes, but maybe my car's just heavier or I'm running more downforce, but I think that's unlikely because I crafted the setup for dry conditions. Come on now. Still ran wide there because of the draft from the cars in front. It's very hard to know exactly where I'm needing to brake. Definitely broke too late there. Let's try that again. It's all learning. It's all learning. Yeah, everyone has a power advantage. That much is clear, I think. So if I'm going to get past them, it will be on corner speed, which is... my corner speed today is very hit and miss. And this could be the one, boys.
We have 2 laps of fuel remaining.
Ah, shit. No. Yeah, look at how quickly they start to pull away. I wish I had DRS. Never said that before in my life. Yeah, a clean overtake. Who would have thought it from me after all that pressure?
Reduce the ERS deployment, please. We need to charge the battery.
Oh god, next lap's the last lap. I think we're going to miss out on this point. It's so hard to follow the cars in front and to then get past them is a step too far. Actually, this is our last lap. So Stroll, in the end, our arch nemesis, gets the point for which we were so desperately fighting. And we bring it home 12th, which isn't bad, but given that I can see 10th, I'm a little bit annoyed. Because a few more laps and maybe I could have got it. Whew. Oh, is that all I get for a drive like that? surprising literally nobody.
That gave them the edge over the competition today.
It's a heroic effort for any drivers racing conditions like these. To fight their way to the front was very special indeed. They were able to find all the grip, all the good lines, and have the confidence to get on the power to top it all off. That's what puts them into first place here today.
And I can see the drivers starting to approach the podium for the victory celebrations. A real team victory today. Everybody played their part. Congratulations then to Mercedes, your race winners today.
It's nice to have some new podium animations. They've needed those for years.
So let's review the
Ah, that's not good. The game has crashed. Apparently you can still hear me. Let's see. Well, this isn't good, because I don't want to have to run that race again. Well, this looks like a hard crash. Thank you to everyone who's joined. I will see you next time. Bye.